Good morning. We are continuing working with those rational numbers that we've been talking about. Today we are doing CO3. I can order rational numbers and identify opposites and absolute values. So in order to understand what we're doing, we have to know our definitions. Absolute value is the distance of a number from zero. So that's how far it is. I don't know why that's doing that. That's kind of weird. Alright, so let's move it over. Okay, so when we're talking absolute value, it doesn't matter if it's a positive number or a negative number, it's how many jumps it takes to get back to zero. That is its absolute value. How many jumps it takes to get back to zero is always going to be a positive number. Whether or not we start off as a positive or negative, how far from zero we are is always going to be positive. So if we look at that number line, I'm just going to put a number line. If we're at right here, let's call that 5. It takes us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to get back to 0. So 5's absolute value is 5. If we're at negative 5, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to get back to 0. So negative 5's absolute value is going to be 5. It's how many jumps it takes to get back to 0. Now when we talk about absolute value, we will see it written a certain way. We're not writing it that way in today's lesson, but I want us to know because next week we're taking our math test, and you might see this. And I want you to recognize that absolute value that we're talking about, how you might see it, and then you'll know how to do those problems. So when you see a number in between two lines, those two lines mean find its absolute value. So what's the absolute value of 5? 5. What if I wrote there? 2. Because that's saying what's the absolute value of negative 2. Okay, so when you see those two lines, it's saying, hey, give me the absolute value. The absolute value of the number will always be positive. So just because there's a negative in front of the 2 doesn't mean its absolute value is negative 2, because it's not negative 2 hops away from 0, it's 2 hops away. So that absolute value will always be a positive number. The other key term that we need is the opposites. Opposites are numbers that are the same distance from 0. They have the same absolute value. So opposites are those numbers that one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, and they're the same hops away from 0. So they're the same number, except one has a positive sign and one has a negative sign. Right? So if I were to give you that -2, what would its opposite be? Michael? A +2. And the +2 we just write as a 2. We don't have to put the positive sign in front of it. What if I give you 15? What would its opposite be? Christina? -15. Okay? Once we understand what the terms mean, are the terms really scary? Now, we hear absolute value, and at first we're like, what's absolute value? What does that mean? But once we understand it, we go, oh, this isn't too bad. It's not quite so scary anymore now that I understand what it means. All right, so another term for opposite of a number is its additive inverse. So on that math test, they might say, what's the additive inverse of -5? What would its additive inverse be? Becky? 5. It just means the opposite. So it's just understanding what these math words mean, and then they're not quite so scary. We call it the additive inverse because it's the number's opposite is whatever you can add to it in order to get it to 0. So if you're at 5, and then there's -5, that's how we get to 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. -5 plus 5 is 0. So that's why it's the additive inverse, because you add them together and you get 0. So that's the lesson for today. So now, for some reason, my board is doing something funky. I don't know why my normal eraser isn't up. I don't know why my red pen is writing in black. So it's going to take me a minute to erase all of this. But we're going to scroll up to see what our work is for today. What do we have to do? I'm just going to scroll up from there. All right. For each value, A to F, A to F are labeled on the line. So you need to write its opposite and its absolute value. For letters G to H, you're going to plot it on the line, then write its opposite and absolute value. So if we look at A, we have to find A on the line. What is A's opposite? A is at -5. What's its opposite? Luke?
+5.
+5. What is its absolute value? David?
+5.
+5. So that's how you're going to complete all that top. You're just finding it, which dot it is, telling me its opposite and its absolute value. Then down here for G, 1 2/3. We have to plot that on our line. Where do you think I'm going to put that dot? Robbie?
In the middle, the middle of +1 and 2, and just a little more toward the 2.
Yeah, because we know it's a whole 1, so it's going to be after that 1, but we're not to the 2 yet. 2/3 means we're closer to the 2 than we are to the 1, and then I'm going to label that G. So I'm going to put my dot on the line and I'm going to label it. Now I'm going to do the opposite and the absolute value. What is the opposite of 1 2/3? Claire.
-1 2/3.
-1 2/3. What would its absolute value be? Kamala? 1 2/3. You're going to do the same for the rest of these letters. Find where it would be on the number line. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Be careful with those negatives. Because here we said, okay, we know it's bigger than 1. We've got mixed numbers. What do you think we're going to want to do those, not mixed numbers. We have improper fractions. What do we want to do to those improper fractions to figure out where they go on the line? Hadley? Make them a mixed number. And remember, when it's a negative number, if it's negative 4.1, am I going to go to the right or to the left with that 0.1? To the left. Very good, Rafa. Okay, so be careful when we're graphing those negative numbers. Now let's look at the bottom. Remember, the further to the, oh, this is what I was just talking about. The further to the left you go on the number line, the smaller your value is. Check letter J is your point on the left side of negative 4. So that's just what we talked about. Then you have some word questions to answer. So why are 20 and negative 20 opposites? Think back to what we talked about on this page. What makes them opposites? So answer those questions on the bottom. Are there any questions about today's assignment? Now, you guys kind of left out that our soccer challenge day, when we have a smaller class period and we were all revved up and had a hard time settling down, it's a one-page assignment. And it's not an overwhelming assignment. So you should have enough time to work on this assignment today. I am going to be passing back practice works that people have given me. Some are approved, some we have some mistakes to fix. Retake day is tomorrow. So make sure if you have practice work for objectives you need to retake, that you're turning them into the blue tray so I can be correcting them so we can get those retakes done tomorrow. If you have questions, that's where I'm available to give you answers. I'm also going to be making our video tomorrow for packet number 1. So that way we can be working on that packet also. So if you are watching this from home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.